Okay, I've made plenty of jokes about the Elementalist, about how downstate is a part of their rotation, how squishy they are. You get it. But I wanted to have a serious discussion. What's wrong with the Elementalist? If you followed my channel for a while, you know that I've played a number of professions. I played a firebrand for a while through the Guardian. I played Deadeye for a while and really enjoyed that through the Thief. Up until recently, I was playing the Engineer, the Scrapper, and having a great time with it. And now, Elementalist. Trying all these different professions to find out which one I liked the best. When the Catalyst was announced, I gave it so much crap. I made so many jokes about it, so many memes. Why would you give a spellcaster, a literal translator of the elements, a hammer and put them into melee? What? But then I went ahead and did a meme-tage with the Tempest, Fresh Air Tempest, and I had a blast. It literally was like a lightning strike. So I immediately created an Elementalist and I power toned him all the way up to level 80. Like just boom, all the way up. And then I worked on getting some gear and unlocking the Catalyst. And let me tell you, it slapped. Smacked, smashed, rocked. I mean, you could, however you wish to put it. It hit hard and I loved it. And then I realized why they gave Elementalists so much crap. I ate the floor so much that I joke, but it was tough to play an Elementalist, to do competitive damage and not die. Obviously, I got a lot better, and that's when I really started noticing some of the glaring issues with the profession. And first, obviously, is the skill ceiling. It's pretty up there. Now, professions like the Engineer, up until the release of the Mechanist, was a bit difficult to play because you had so many different buttons. You had to kind of muscle memorize where everything was. It made it challenging. And even in that sense of every profession having their own little dance between their abilities, most of the time their rotations are pretty simplified. And if we're looking at like in a PvE setting, it was fairly easy. There was plenty of professions that had no issue. Yeah, I'm basically talking about the Guardian, the Guardian. And those professions were rewarded for mediocre play with their outstanding DPS. The crazy amount of damage and capabilities that they had was basically praised. Not so much with the Elementalist. Now, I realize in PvE content, strikes, raids, there's nothing perfect about it. You're not going to have perfect DPS because you have to move to soak an ability. You have to move to get out of the way of one. There's so many little ins and outs that you have to pay attention to. So to have perfect DPS is unreasonable. But it never felt as punishing as it did when I played the Elementalist. The slightest misclick out of the rotation order that was required, and my DPS plummeted from its already mediocre level. Now, I come from a WoW rating background, so I always take this into mindset that low DPS is always better than a dead DPS. Doesn't matter how much damage you can do in the first minute of the fight, but if you don't last the 7 minutes required, then you're pretty useless. But with LA, it just felt like you were being punished and slapped for the slightest mess up. And let's be serious, you're gonna mess up. PvP was a little bit of the same mentality. However, the flow of combat is never the same for rotation. Like, you have your burst combos, and you kind of deal with these new information bits coming in. So, okay, Bladesworn is charging his Dragon Slash. Let's Lightning Flash out of the way. So we're playing a little bit more of a defensive route, a kind of reaction route with a lot of these things. And after a while, you did pick it up and you picked up what worked best. So it wasn't as bad as PvE. But either playing Mozart classical music on the piano versus being at the very bottom of the charts is kind of daunting, and obviously it's less appealing to new players, and I think that might be one reason why people don't necessarily want to play the Elementalist. And this next point kind of rolls with that, is really the lack of unique and powerful elite skills that the Elementalists have. And before you get into it, I understand every profession has that one elite skill that is just crap that nobody ever uses, or it has like very, very fine-tuned niche uses. I get that. but Ellies feel like they have quite a few. I mean, you look at Tornado, which is in its own right an amazing ability, really cool aesthetic, kind of weak damage, only really good for pop and break bars, I suppose. In PvE content, outside of open world, it doesn't really have too many practical uses because of its low damage. In PvP, you get rocked as soon as you're popped into Tornado. You have stability, yeah, you can't be knocked around and all that, and you can instantly get focused from a distance by a number of professions, and you can't do anything about it. And then you have like Fiery Greatsword, which is arguably one of the coolest abilities in the game. I love using this ability because it feels powerful. Until I read the rotation for most of the time using Fiery Greatsword. Basically, you drop Firestorm, and then you use Fiery Rush, and then you drop the weapon. You don't even get to sit in the weapon and use all of its cool abilities. It's just a set and kind of forget, and there you go. It's more DPS to switch to your other attunements than to use your elite skill, which, come on. And then, of course, you could look at the Fiery Greatsword in PvP, which is, it's great. Don't get me wrong, it has a ton of fantastic uses. However, it also removes all the versatility of your profession, your entire profession being able to bounce between attunements. You get this new weapon skill set, and that's cool, but you can't pop your defenses in Earth attunement. You can't cleanse anything in Water attunement. You can't stun anyone in air. It becomes an issue. The Glyph of Greater Elementals, I mean, that's cool too. You get to summon a giant elemental. That's pretty badass. But in PvE, it's really only mediocre DPS. And now in PvE, you can use the Water Elemental, and it does do great healing if you're playing more of like a support Tempest. I've seen that. That does work. Then, of course, in PvP, the Glyph of Greater Elementals just, I mean, you're trolling basically if you try to use it. The elementals can be basically outran, CC'd, and then their unique ability, the target has to be sitting there for a little bit to actually land, and it's only okay. And that usually leaves the elite specs elite skills. I mean, there's a lot of issues with these skills because of the difficulty that goes with them, and then even the weakness that they bring. They don't really offer anything overtly unique. Basically, you're getting pigeonholed into one elite skill, and that's the one that you're going to use. Elemental Celerity is awesome, I like it, but it'd be really cool to pop out in the Tornado or swing the sword a little bit more. If you have liked this video thus far, smack that like button like a stunned Tempest in World v World. It will help push this video out to the masses, and then more people can become caffeinated. Anyway, now this is a bit more of a personal note, but is the Elementalist even really that fun? Now, historically, when I've played MMOs, I've always played the spec, the class, the profession, however you wish to call it, that nobody plays, that nobody has any expectation of going and being well. The reason being is I set this own internal challenge for myself that I have to fight to do mediocre or do top DPS or play very well. I have to play really hard to do that, and that's fun to me. When I raided in WoW, I played Survival Hunter. I was the melee one, and I had a great time. I was consistently invited to groups. I was mid to high tier in the DPS pack. I was never excluded because of that particular spec. And that's partly the reason I picked Elementalist, is because it really was. It was kind of difficult to do what everyone else can do. You had to fight for your spot in there, which I love. I love that concept. To me, that's fun though. To me, that is an enjoyable PvP, PvE experience, is having to work harder than other people around to do kind of what they're doing. You know, it's kind of like just me being my own unique, perfect self, however you want to call it. I enjoy that challenge. I don't get to lay down 4 traps, yank you into it, and call it a day. And with that, most players don't want to be the underdog or the middle of the pack dog. They want to top. They want to be up there. They want to have their rotations, their perfect play be rewarded, and I don't blame them. I really don't. And really with that, it's not necessarily like they're receiving a whole lot of support, at least that is, which leads me to that last point. Arenanet doesn't support Elementalist. There, I said it. I don't feel bad about it. These new patches that have recently come out have already eroded some of the sand that they were already drifting off of. It's kind of hard to be interested in a profession when you know that it's basically the joke of the game. They were on the sidelines, now they're outside the stadium. Now, people can, of course, argue that Arenanet doesn't have the staffing, they don't have the business model, they can't support all the changes perfectly, but in that same case, why is Guardian and Necromancer always on top? Always. I mean, hell, look at the Warrior. Now, luckily, Power Bladesworn is one of the highest DPS out there. That's cool. You took away the really unique aspect of Warrior, which was their banners, and now you made it just an ability, or a boon, I should say, that everyone else gets. Coupled with the high skill ceiling, the average performance, even though it might be perfected, average DPS, and then of course nothing really unique brought to the group. Why would anyone bring an Elementalist when other professions can do the same thing, but better and have an easier time? Doesn't really make sense, does it? I've gotten used to playing my Ellie, and I'm happy to keep doing it. But I understand why people make the joke and they don't want to play it. I absolutely understand. It just doesn't feel like there's a right place for the Elementalist right now. I can't see things changing for the Elementalist anytime soon, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't play it. Check out this Guild Wars 2 Elementalist Profession Spotlight linked here to learn a little bit more of why this is my favorite profession and will continue to be the profession that I play. Stay caffeinated, folks.